So I'm joined with Daniel, who is the founder and the CEO of Biosynergy. And this company is absolutely amazing. I can speak secondhand. I am actually an ambassador for these. I've been using the products for years. So first of all, I just want to say hello to Daniel. Hello, mate.
Hello, happy, well, I don't know if people are watching this on a Wednesday, but it is Workout Wednesday, and it's actually the last Workout Wednesday before we can all go back to working out at the gym. So very exciting times. I know for one, I'm going to be in the queue on Monday, trying to get in my first proper workout.
Yeah, definitely me too. I'm actually going to do like a Q&A with you because I think this is a massive subject about nutrition and sports supplements. And I think where's best to start is what makes Biosynergy different? Let's start with that.
I think, well, I've got to go back to the beginning and why I started the brand. So although I'm probably not in the best shape now, I'll blame lockdown. The fact of the matter is, from the ages until basically throughout the whole of my school career, I was always the fat kid that was hiding and was getting bullied and so on for being the fat kid. And that ended up, you get into a vicious circle of eating too many Wham bars and giant cookies, and it just gets worse. So by the time I kind of left secondary school, I was a bit of a chubby kid or young adult. But I then arrived at university, and I think during that kind of summer between finishing school and university, I had a bit of an extra secondary growth spurt, which stretched me out a little bit, although I'm still not tall. So I ended up being a bit leaner, and I think that was then compounded by the fact I lost 2 stone on a trip to India where I got deli belly. So I ended up starting university a kind of quite skinny kid, and I had the fortune, I guess, or misfortune of living with a bunch of very tough Northern Rugby League boys who were very much gym goers, and they gave me a lot of stick. And despite my youthful looks and my apparently young epigenetic age, I grew up with, Rocky, and I guess I was inspired by, the Eye of the Tiger, drinking, raw eggs. So I ended up starting going to a very spit and sawdust gym, which there's probably not many of those around now. So when I started going to the gym, it was very much a male-dominated area. Often men not wearing much clothes, a lot of bromances going on, a lot of being sold under the table as well. So I was going to this kind of really spit and sawdust gym up in Manchester, I think it was, I can't remember the name of the place, but it was pretty near Cheadle Hulme, which was quite a rough area back in the day. So, I was taking my life in my hands, but I was going, and protein powder wasn't as ubiquitous, if at all, as it is now. I was drinking raw eggs, and I realised actually raw eggs, despite them being good for sort of sliced alone, weren't really my go-to. So I bought a blender, and I started blending up raw eggs, Horlicks, peanut butter, and bananas, and that was a lot more acceptable. And that became my kind of protein shake. And then I started eating a lot better. So there was there was a discount store called Quick Save back then, where I used to be able to get very cheap chicken breasts. So basically I lived on chicken breasts and my own kind of protein shake. And my goal was at the time to bench press 60 kilos, which by the time I'd left university, I was pleased to say I overcame that hurdle.
Yeah.
And also at that time, he had a new TV show launched called Gladiators.
Oh, I love that program. Yeah.
Yeah. Ready. So I was never going to be a gladiator, but I certainly liked the idea of going onto the show as a contender. So that became my kind of focus. So when I left university, I kind of did the normal thing. I got a job, but I wasn't very keen on it. And I packed it in quite quickly. And I came up with an idea, which was to set up a business providing online fitness. So I had a friend who was a personal trainer, and unlike today, there weren't that many personal trainers around.
No.
So what we did is we set up an 0898 number, for anybody that can remember those, which is basically a premium call rate number. And people would ring in, leave their details, like, hi, I'm Nathan, I want to lose weight, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And this guy who was also called Daniel would then write out a training program, which we would then post out to you. And so we were advertising it in GQ and all these kind of places. And we got a bit of traction on it, but it never really built up. I think largely because it just wasn't scalable. You know, one person writing the programs and you were reliant on people calling an 0898 number. So the next thing I did was I set up a company called Room Share, which was the idea is if you had an empty room or an empty house, you could find somebody to rent out that room or your house. And we did it through Loot. So what we do is we do an advert for landlords. Are you looking for like a non-smoker, blah, blah, blah. And if you're, advertised in like the Evening Standard, are you looking for a home to rent or a room to rent? And we had a Rolodex. We used to match people up based on their requirements. So you could almost say it was like the first Airbnb. But again,
ahead of the time, weren't you really then?
And because of technology, it just wasn't scalable. So I was now going to the gym a bit more. I actually qualified as a nutritionist and then an SAQ coach and as a PT. And I was training at a gym, Hendon Youth Centre, with a friend of mine. And in between sets, my friend had introduced me to a sports nutrition brand at that point. I said, look, stop with this bloody shaking thing that you're making. Just buy some bloody protein. So I started doing that. And I just didn't find it was working for me. Like I was taking a load of stuff from this company. And it so happened the person that owned that company also trained in the same gym. And it was only, I think, 2 years old at the time. So I went up to that guy in between sets and I said, look, I've been using your product, I'm training hard, but it's not working for me. And he said, I'm doing a lat pull down. And a little switch in my head went, I'm starting a sports nutrition company. So what I wanted to do from the outset was what I saw, there was a shift from this kind of spit and sawdust gym to more fitness.
What year would that have been?
So that was 97.
97.
So it was like, you saw David Lloyd gaining momentum. You saw first launching LA Fitness. A lot of the gyms that have gone now, Dragons. It was a big kind of boom back in the late 90s. And a lot of those clubs have disappeared now and others have come in their place.
Yeah.
What I saw was that there was people like me who weren't professional athletes, but they had fitness goals and they wanted something to help them get the most out of their time. And then also there was the professional athlete who in many cases was a bit concerned about what they were putting in their body. But you had a lot of New Zealanders and Kiwis and Australians beginning to dominate the coaching side of sport in the UK. They were talking about, supplementation. And there wasn't that much choice. The brands that were around there were very kind of bodybuilding. In fact, the biggest brand at the time was probably Weider or EAS.
Yeah.
Which have almost, I think, disappeared now, sadly. So what I wanted to do was create a brand that was very based on science, that would also be suitable for not just the fitness lover and enthusiast, but also for the pro, and also that would be able to travel with that person as they change their needs.
Yeah.
So at the time, the most researched product, and it probably still is, was creatine. But the only way it was available was as creatine monohydrate powder. So it wasn't particularly, it was okay, and it doesn't taste of anything, and it's a great product, but it wasn't very user-friendly. So I came up with two ideas. One, I grew up around pharmacy. My dad was a pharmacist, was that any medicine was always in a capsule. So I asked my dad, why? And he said, well, the reason why is it's efficacious, so you get a measured dose. It's convenient, and so it's safe, so nobody's meddled with it. So this got me thinking. So the idea, if you look at all the research now and then, Paul Greenhalgh was probably the number one researcher in this space, along with a guy called Ron Morn. So all their research pointed to the fact you want to do a 5-day loading dose and a 2-month maintenance, have a month off, and then cycle again. And then the other thing that I noticed, whether it was normal people or athletes, they were looking for two things. They were looking for performance, but also weight loss. So for an average individual, obviously reducing body fat is always a good thing from a health point of view. But then from a point of view of an athlete, if they can reduce their body fat and maintain their lean muscle mass, it means they can improve their power to weight ratios, and it has lots of other benefits as well. So the idea was to create a creatine capsule, which would be a 5-day loading dose, which was phase 1. And then in phase 2, your maintenance supply, but included in that was a fat burner called chitosan, which 23 years on is actually on the EFSA approved list as being, an efficacious product for helping reducing body fat. So at the time, a friend of mine, his job was improving performance in soldiers, in recruits. So he agreed to use them as guinea pigs for my product. So he did a lovely report for me after about 6 months, outlining that basically their lean muscle increased, their recovery increased, their body fat reduced, their VO2 max, and lots of benefits had occurred. So armed with that, I then found a contract manufacturer and launched. And I was working at the time for my parents' loft. So I'd get the products delivered into their garage. I'd bring it in, label it on kitchen and dining room tables. And we also launched a website back then on dial-up, believe it or not. And you had to ring up. So you place the order on the website and you have to ring up our hotline with your credit card details, because you couldn't accept credit cards over the phone. Over the internet at that time, and it would have been very painful. So what I'd then do is I'd pack up the orders. So we started advertising in Men's Health. Our first advert was "Be yourself, be your best, be Biosynergy. If you want to increase lean muscle and burn fat, call us." And people started ringing, and then I started. Literally, I had bought 1.4L at the time. I used to fill up the car in the morning and then drive around gyms, health food retailers, sports shops, anywhere I could think of, to try and sell the product. And then in the afternoon, I'd come back, hopefully with an empty car, pack up the orders, drive to my local post station to a guy called Ash with my grey postal sacks, and send the goods off. And then one day, I got a call from a guy, and again, because of my fatness as a child, I never had any interest in sport, and I didn't even know how many people played on a football team. One afternoon, I got a phone call from a guy called Gary in Islington, saying, "Hi, I've heard about your creatine. Can you tell me a bit more about it?" I explained to him the benefits, and he said, "Oh, do you deliver?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, how many kits do you want? He goes, "Well, I've got a team, so I probably want 30. And I was like, 30? Like in my head, this is like a massive order. I said, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm at the stadium." I said, "Yeah, okay, which stadium?" He goes, "The stadium." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm not with you." And he goes, "The football stadium." I said, "Okay, which football stadium?" And it turned out it was Arsenal. So I jumped in the 1.4L, drove up there, met Gary, and he literally said, "I'll take it and go upstairs and get a check." I was like, "Whoa, big order." And then about a week or two later, there was a newspaper at the time called the Sunday Sport.
Yeah, I remember that.
On the back page, there was a picture of Arsenal's Ian Wright.
Yeah.
And a tiny weeny picture of our Creatine Plus. And the headline was, "Arsenal Gunners pop growth pills pre-season."
Oh.
And say that they were using supplements to improve their performance. And before you knew it, I was getting calls from every football club, rugby club, and so on. And at the time, sport was still owned mostly by high net worth. It wasn't really a corporate business. So they were interested in, their players, as in, they were happy to spend money rather than looking for sponsorship. So I spent probably the next 6 to 9 months just literally driving around everywhere from Gateshead Rugby League down to Tottenham. And I remember going to the Tottenham training ground, and the doctor there, a guy called Dr. Mark Curtin, introduced me. And it was just during pre-season, and the players were sitting in this room. Half of them were smoking.
Unbelievable.
Which you can't imagine.
Yeah.
So, fast forward a few years, and basically by the early 2000s, we'd launched into Selfridges and Lily Whites, and some big pharmacy chains. And we were official suppliers to the British Basketball League, the Ice Hockey Super League, the whole of county cricket, Premier Rugby, most of the Premiership, all of Rugby Super League, and also the British Irish Lions. And as a result of these relationships, by the 2002 Commonwealth Games were going to be up in Manchester. And the chief nutritionist for that games happened to work with Scottish Rugby, and so she knew me. And we ended up developing, believe it or not, the first ever isotonic sports drink with a sports cap. Happened before, and without any artificial colours, flavours in there. And it was called Liquid Energy, and that became the official drink of the Commonwealth Games up in Manchester. And off the back of that, we actually launched into Selfridges, into Tesco. So we were probably one of the first brands to go mainstream. And at one point in 2002, I think we were in about 400 Tesco stores with our full range at that time, including the first high protein bar called Perfect Balance.
Wow.
20 grams of protein in there, and also ready to drink protein, which we called Body Perfect, which back in those days was in a Tetra Pak. And then 2005, I had a meeting with a guy called Lord Sebastian Coe, and he actually came on board temporarily as chairman, and also he invested in the business as well at the time. Sadly, the Daily Mail did an article, Seb Coe gets top job at company selling banned supplements. And if you read it, that was the headline. The rest of the thing, they said, in some countries, sports supplements are banned. And sadly, because he was at the time trying to win and then won the Olympic Games for 2012, he had to resign, although he's still a share today. So that was a bit of a blow. And then, since then, we've just been, we've been still very focused on innovation and quality and authenticity. So to this day, all our brand ambassadors, of which I'm glad to have you as one, are not paid or given free product unless it's maybe a birthday or an anniversary or a baby born. And we've got, Premier Global, which is the world's #1 trainer of personal trainers. We're their exclusive nutrition partner. And the same goes for a number of other very well-recognised, professional bodies.
Yeah.
So currently what we're doing as well is we've now, we've stepped away from the ready-to-drink protein because we're very conscious about our environmental impact. So everything that we do is made in the UK. All our packaging is either upcyclable or recyclable. And what we realised about RTDs is that whichever brand you choose, if it's a dairy-based one, typically the first ingredient is always water. And the second ingredient is generally semi-skim milk powder, which, although a source of protein, isn't the best source of protein. So what we've done is we've developed a smart protein vending machine. So it's a bit like the Costa coffee machine that you're a BP or a Tesco. We've done that for protein, whether it's dairy or plant-based, which means that customers can get a fresh shake. It's of better quality in terms of the ingredients. And also, very importantly, rather than having to move bottles, which are heavy and predominantly water around, you're just selling a powder to the user, which means that effectively...
is that Leo?
I have to pause there. Somebody's coming so in. As I was saying, the vending machine is a new innovation and something that we hope, my vision is hopefully to get one against every Costa machine in the country, because I think people now not only love coffee, but I think a delicious protein shake, whether you're on the go or you've had a workout or you just want something as an alternative to perhaps a sandwich, is just perfect. So keep your eyes out for that. We've got a couple out in Boots already, and they're going into gyms and leisure centres, hopefully, now lockdown is over. So,
yeah, I mean, what I like about that is the convenience and how tasty it is, because I've tasted a lot of them pre-made ones, and they almost taste a little bit gloopy, but I really like the Biosynergy ones. I think they're spot on.
Thank you. The other thing I would say, I mean, it's a bit off topic, is, there's a lot of people now, that are, starting new businesses and so on. And I think that what has sustained me and my team through everything for the last 24 years, and there's been lots of ups and downs, is our passion for the product.
Yeah.
I think that often, particularly nowadays, people see a category, whatever it is, whether it's sports and nutrition or even personal training, as a way of making some quick money. Yeah. And that can be done. But I think there's a big difference between people who do something out of passion, people who do it purely for profit.
I can really relate to that, because obviously what I do is it's that strong passion of waking up in the morning and helping others and creating things around which is going to help with that.
Yeah. And sometimes the people that are really focused on profit ultimately are better entrepreneurs and probably going to be more successful financially. And there's definitely cases of that, that I see all the time. There's companies, launching all the time, and what they're doing, which I didn't do when I was 21 when I started, was they built, they got investment before they even opened the front door, based on the size of the market. And when I started, the size of the market globally was smaller than the total UK market now.
Yeah.
There wasn't that opportunity. So I think, for anybody listening, whose business advice would be, either follow your passion and do something that you really, really love, or if you're going to do something purely because you see it as an opportunity, then, take advantage of the modern opportunities that are available to raise money and so on before you open the front door.
Yeah. Again, what I find really inspirational with your story, like I said, you really explain really well what makes Biosynergy so different, is the breakthrough moment of when you got that opportunity with Arsenal Football Club, which is Highbury at the time, actually, which is called the Emirates now. That to me is inspirational to me, that is that we all need that bit of luck and that breakthrough in business, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes, there's, like with COVID, luck can turn as well. I think another, pivotal moment for me was in 2002, going into Tesco at the time.
Yeah.
And also, beginning to do some export. We're now in a few other countries, in Asia and Europe. And, sometimes, I think you have to be lucky, but the more stuff that you put out there and the harder you work, the more luck that you're more likely to
get.
I
like that. You find luck, basically. You make your own luck.
But sometimes there's stuff that just comes out that you just can't help. So a lot of people who are listening would have been affected by COVID. There'll probably be some people who've done really well out of it selling PPE, but for the most part, that's something that nobody could have protected against. And I think that you've got to just appreciate that. I think I read somewhere, you've got to control the controllables, and you can't. There's certain things that are outside our control as individuals, and you can't beat yourself up about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I'll tell you what's really interesting about your story as well is, in a lot of ways, Biosynergy, or yourself, was the pioneer to a lot of these protein elements. Now, like protein bars are huge. All these different things what you almost created first, didn't you, at the time?
I mean, look, we've definitely been innovators. Like we're currently just launched the DNA and epigenetics, as you know. For me, it's all about personalization. I never want somebody to buy something they don't need, but I do want them to buy stuff they do need. And if it can help them improve their well-being, or, give them marginal gains as an athlete, then, I'm very much for that. But again, back to the kind of more general business stuff, sometimes being first isn't always best. Sometimes you want to be the second or third person in, and it's about timing. And when we launched the protein bars, they were popular, but nothing compared to the kind of the size of the market now. And the similar with other things. Even the whole category was smaller.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you've got millions of people. I think, assuming everybody goes back to the gym, I think there's 10 million gym members in the UK. Whereas you were probably looking at 1 million back when I started. So, the market has grown tenfold.
Yeah.
Just in terms of your customer base. So again, don't get disheartened if you are an innovator and you don't succeed. Just try again, as my dad would say.
Yeah. Again, going back to the actual protein itself, obviously there's fundamental things what you look out for when you have protein shakes in particular. I'm going to prefer to protein shake. I've actually got your one here, in fact. There's certain things I look out for, and that is obviously the protein content, whether there's any obvious chemicals in it, sugar levels. Obviously, if I'm leaning up, I don't want too high in sugar.
Yeah.
But there's something else to all this, isn't there? All well and good that it displays on there, but there's an element of trust with it, isn't there?
Absolutely. Well, there's also another point, Nathan, is that sometimes brands will say 50 grams of protein in a serving, and it's not often easy to find out what's in a serving. So there's an example of a brand that is very value driven, shall we say, and they'll say like 50 grams of protein in a serving, but you work it out, and actually a serving's 150 grams.
Yeah.
So there's two annoying things about that. Firstly, it's impossible to assimilate 50 grams of protein anyway. And even if that weren't the case, the other 100 grams is carbohydrates. So it's always good to look at the per 100 grams or the per serving and understand what you're getting is like for like. So often people, play around with the numbers, which if you're not paying close attention can potentially send you down the wrong path.
Can trick you.
The other thing is that, to look out, for us, as I said earlier, we don't pay anybody to endorse our brand. We don't give free product other than to the numerous charities that we support, such as cancer research and smaller charities such as Mind and so on. Is that, how authentic is the brand and how authentic are the people that are using it and promoting it? And, this is something you're putting in your body. It's not an item of clothing. This is something that potentially could cause you, not necessarily harm, but it could not help you if it's the wrong product. And particularly if they are fudging things on their label or so on, it's definitely unethical.
Yeah.
And for us, I'd rather have, a personal trainer with one follower endorsing our brand and a celebrity with 1 million if I'm paying that celebrity and they're not actually using or buying into the brand. And in fact, there was a show on BBC Three whereby they approached, it was like a Gotham show. They approached 3 well-known celebrity influencers and their agents and offered them, I think a 5 or 6 figure amount for endorsing a product. And the first ingredient on that product list was cyanide. And anybody that knows anything knows that cyanide kills you. All of them, without exception, agreed to promote the product. So it is, it's all very well that, somebody well-known is seen to be promoting it, but are they generally using it? And how are they moving from brand A to brand B? Because that's all about them chasing the money or their agent chasing the money. What you want is to see, there's a guy called Francis Moriarty, who is a kickboxing coach, who was probably, I actually have still got the postal book from 1997. So we're talking 24 years ago now. He was one of our first customers 24 years ago, and he's still using the product today. And I think even you must have been a customer now for 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, 2015, I believe it was. Yeah, that's when I'm on board. Yeah.
And, throughout that time, you've been using our product consistently, I believe, recommending that to your clients. Whereas, you're getting a celebrity who this week is getting £100,000 check from brand X, and next week they're on the bandwagon with another one. So, and I understand, again, the economics of why they do it, but who's looking out for the little guy and for the customer?
Yeah, very true. Yeah, because it's proven that obviously your ambassadors are actually using it. Well, like you said, with other companies, they might have these big names, but like you clearly said there, are they actually really using it? Like they're making out?
Yeah, and I know from experience that certainly a lot of the sports people that are endorsing other brands are actually either buying ours or another brand, or in fact, because a lot of them at the very top end have got chefs and so on call, aren't using anything at all. Yeah.
Well, I think you've explained each of the elements really well. And I said happy 24th anniversary to
Thank you.
Biosynergy, which was what day was that? Was that
Well, that
last?
was 1st of May, so
Yeah.
it's just up. So hopefully, unless something disastrous happens, we should make it.
Yeah, you'll definitely make that. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me today, Daniel.
No,
And like I said, this will be out on the podcast very soon. And obviously people be listening to this right now anyway. But is there anything more you want to add to someone who's listening and maybe they want
I
to?
think if you're serious about your training and we can help you in any way. So we've got lots of really good guides on our website. Again, we've just launched our DNA and epigenetic service. So what we want you to be able to do is to understand from a personal point of view what your needs are, whether that be diet, training, exercise, or even supplementation. And ultimately, it could be that what you've been doing may not be the right thing for you. And the DNA kit is a one-off thing. Your DNA doesn't change from the day you're born to the day you die. So it's probably the best investment you can make if you're going to be heading back to the gym or you just want a healthier lifestyle. Whether you're an individual or a coach or a PT. And I think if you're looking at taking any supplements, that do your homework. If you're fortunate enough to have a personal trainer or you belong to a gym, try and seek independent advice. And also, a bit like anything else, don't buy on price. This is your body you're talking about.
Yeah.
You don't want to put anything in there. Now, my dad used to have a saying, you wouldn't put sugar in your petrol tank. So don't put that isn't Biosynergy or at least of comparable quality into your body, because ultimately the only person that you're conning is yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
If like me, you're not a fitness professional or an athlete, you've only got a limited time.
Yeah.
To your fitness goals, and you want to maximize that time. And if you're using the right products at the right time, that can allow you to get the most out of that time. And it's the one thing that all of us have in common. We've only got finite time.
Yeah.
Whether you're rich, old, young, whatever, you can't, unless somebody's invented a time machine, and I never got the memo, you can't get it back. So what you want to do, particularly if you want to balance your life, if you've got a family and you've got other commitments, is you want to be able to go in, do what you've got to do to get fit and healthy, and then do all the other stuff that you love once we're allowed to do it again.
Yeah.
And again, the right supplement, the right training, the right diet, all of that can allow you to maximize that time and to make it happen.
Right. I mean, I learned a lot about myself with that DNA test. I'm looking forward to getting the epigenetics result through and looking at the comparison. But yeah, for those who's listening, I'll leave a link to my YouTube video for that one, because I actually go into detail about my results, and there's actually going to be a link there of how to actually get that DNA if you're interested. But thanks for joining me, Daniel. Hopefully you'll be back in the future, and it was great to have you.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. Have a wicked workout Wednesday.
See you later.